26/11 Mumbai terror attacks, Tahawwur Rana, one of the key conspirators, was finally extradited to India from the United States to face trial. A Delhi court has now sent the Mumbai terror attack case accused Tahawwur Rana to 18-day NIA custody hours after he was extradited from the United States. He's currently being lodged at the NIA headquarters in New Delhi. Anushka Garg has been tracking the finer developments for us. She joins us live at the moment. Anushka, so Tahawwur Rana faces charges under UAPA, waging war against India, murder, conspiracy. Take us through what exactly investigators are hoping to uncover now.
That's right, Parmeshwar. Tahawwur Rana did play a key role in the 26/11 attacks. We do know that the conspirator number one, who was David Headley, he was also in fact giving logistics and finance with the help of Tahawwur Rana. Tahawwur Rana was the person who gave him the cover of First Immigration Center, whose office is in Tardev in Mumbai. And we are also seeing that finally, after many years, he has returned back to the Indian soil. The NIA had yesterday made a legal arrest. His medical was done. He was produced to the NIA court, and a special prosecutor was in fact also appointed to manage all of these cases. And now we are seeing that the NIA has taken him to for an 18-day custody. Now many of the questions will be asked from him. He will be asked as to what kind of a role did he play, how did he manage to get that amount of money to finance the terror attack, and also how was he using the cover of the immigration center, which helped David Headley to in fact walk around in India and do recce of several different locations. He will also be taken to the locations where he himself went with his wife, such as Hapur, Agra, Jaipur, and several different locations also, which is in fact right now being questioned as to what kind of a role he was playing. Now remember, David was a very active conspirator in this whole matter, and Tahawwur Rana was the person who in fact gave him the cover. Right now we're just outside the NIA headquarters. We'll also show you some visuals from out here. This whole area has been cordoned off. The whole roads that are connecting to this particular area has been blocked. The metro station and the gate of Jawaharlal Nehru Stadium has also in fact been closed. There is a heavy security deployment, not just from Delhi police but also paramilitary force, CISF. Every police officials can be seen here working for the security. But also we are seeing the kind of developments that are in fact taking place. The main agenda of the NIA will be to uncover how David Headley managed to get in touch with Tahawwur Rana, and how Tahawwur Rana in fact helped him come inside India and plan such a big terror attack on different locations. And that is what we are getting to know, that he will be taken to different locations. He will be asked as to what role the Pakistani army, the Lashkar-e-Taiba, which is said to be the organization that they were connected to, all of them were playing in this whole terror attack. And that is why the whole investigation and questioning is going on. We know that he is a very hardened terrorist. It will not be quite easy for the NIA also to uncover the truth from him. But the step is in fact going on. David Headley did say that he was suffering from Parkinson's disease. He was having abdominal aneurysm, and his cognitive abilities are declining. But we have to wait and see what kind of a truth can be uncovered. And this is a massive step for India in fighting the terror attack against the country. Over to you.
Anushka, thanks so much for joining us with the latest developments. The other crucial story we're tracking: US stocks have tumbled as euphoria over US President Donald Trump's 90-day tariff pause faded amid continued uncertainty and his escalating trade war with China, of course. The S&P 500 fell 3.5%, and the dollar, in fact, had its worst day since 2022, as the White House said tariffs on Beijing now total 145%. New data shows that inflation eased in March. It wasn't enough to impress investors, though, who are sobering up and realizing that the US-China food fight will probably get worse before it gets better. This is what some analysts are arguing. Some traders, meanwhile, say the coast is not all clear. Meanwhile, I must also mention that some major Asian financial markets have opened lower after Wall Street stocks resumed their slide. But to take this further and for further clarity regarding the global ramifications, we have with us emerging markets expert Jeffrey Dennis. Mr. Dennis, thanks so much for making time for us. This sell-off suggests that market volatility will persist. This is what many experts are arguing, since it indicates that the US's effective tariff rate still is at the highest level since at least 1934. What's your take, sir?
Oh, I think that's absolutely right. I think the volatility is going to continue. Some of the technical guys would say that when you get a huge rally like you had the prior day, you'll always get some sort of pullback, a natural pullback of about a third. Now, this is a bit more than a third, but I think this sort of pullback that we've had today was to be entirely expected. And I think from a fundamental point of view, it was, as you've said already, the realization from the markets and from investors that although there's relief over the reciprocal tariffs being put on hold for 90 days, there is still a large number of countries, by definition, facing a 10% tariff, which is unfortunate. And of course, meanwhile, the China trade war, it just get ratcheted up. Frankly, 145% tariffs on China is kind of ridiculous as far as I'm concerned. So the trade war is not over. We had a euphoric day. We've pulled back a bit, and now I guess we're waiting to see what the macro fallout will be and to see what President Trump might do next.
Right, just to delve deeper into the 145% tariff on Chinese goods, sir, how sustainable is this escalation without triggering a full-blown recession?
I don't think it's sustainable at all. And I mean, you said in your intro that these are the highest levels of tariffs we've had since the 1930s. And of course, there are several reasons why we had the Great Depression in the 1930s. Tariffs was one of them, although poor monetary policy by the Fed was another. But I think we are in a situation now where you're going to see a sharp increase in the price level in the US because of all the tariffs for a period of time. Whether that follows through to inflation over a sustained period will depend on such things as wages and the ability of companies to pass those price increases on. But at the end of the day, it's going to simply increase recessionary trends. The Fed will find it very difficult to do anything on interest rates at the moment. Meanwhile, huge uncertainty on the consumer confidence front and also on corporate confidence. So I think the more these tariffs are ratcheted up, and we've got to see also what happens in 90 days with the reciprocals, I think the greater the risk of recession. I still believe the risk of recession in the US is probably slightly more than 50%.
In fact, JP Morgan had said that it's around 60%, but Wall Street, as we know, has just had one of its worst days this year. Is this a short-term tremor then, sir, or signs of deeper cracks within the US economy?
I think it's not a short-term tremor. I think the US market is going to remain under pressure for a period of time. I think what you need to stabilize the US market is actually an end to the tariff escalation, number one, and goodness only knows when that'll happen. And number two, to get the US economy, to get the market stabilized in the medium term, you need to know the US economy is okay.
Of course.
Now, what could they do to stabilize the US economy? Well, frankly, if the government continues to effectively put more and more tariffs on foreign goods, that's going to make it very hard to stabilize the economy.
Of course.
There is no room to speak of for fiscal action, although there is a very, very big bill going through the House of Representatives right now. And of course, I think at the moment, the Fed doesn't have a lot of room to reduce interest rates. So it's not quite clear what they can do to shore up the economy, short, of course, of actually, abandoning this frankly mad trade war.
In fact, the European Union has paused its retaliatory tariffs, and the United Kingdom, meanwhile, is pushing for a deal. Many say that global partners are actually trying to sidestep Trump's unpredictability. But Jeffrey Dennis, thank you so much for joining us with your views. Really appreciate your time. Meanwhile, the Canadian Prime Minister, Mark Carney, has said that Donald Trump's 90-day pause on reciprocal tariffs marks a welcome reprieve for the global economy. Now, the former chief central banker of both Canada and England said in a post on X that the pending results from the negotiations between the White House and dozens of America's trading partners will likely result in a fundamental restructuring of the global trading system. Now, Mark Carney, as you know, is seeking a mandate from voters to deal with the Trump administration with an election scheduled for end of this month, the 28th of April to be precise. Maha Siddiqui has been tracking all the latest developments in Vancouver for us. She joins us live at the moment. Mark Carney has called Trump's pause on global tariffs a welcome reprieve.
Indeed, he has called it a welcome reprieve, but we must remember that for Canada, there is very little reprieve here because it wasn't hit on the 2nd of April by the reciprocal tariffs because there were already heavy tariffs against Canada. 25% tariffs on steel and aluminum, 25% tariff on automobiles and auto parts, and 10% tariff on energy exports to the United States. Why he's calling this a reprieve is because globally, the tremors that we were seeing because of US President Donald Trump announcing those reciprocal tariffs on the 2nd of April have been immense, and also the manner in which the US's own markets have been reacting to it. He also speaks about this in terms of the shift in global world order, especially through trade, because what we are looking now at is countries at the moment trying to strike a bilateral trade deal with the US. Overall, if you look at the trade regime that came about after World War II and then was in fact put in place for the last many years through the World Trade Organization, it talks about free movement of goods and services of trade without any preferences to various countries. US itself has been a proponent of saying that trade should be seamlessly carried out through an international trade regime rather than bilateral treaties unless there is a border that these countries share. And now we are seeing that being flouted with countries from all across wanting a bilateral trade deal with the United States, considering the situation we are currently seeing. As far as Mark Carney himself is concerned, he's taking a third break from his campaign at the moment, going back from the campaign trail to Ottawa to head a meeting tomorrow with regards to the US-Canada, the trade war currently underway, and it is expected that post 28th April, after the election, we are likely to see negotiations once again. Remember the trade deal between the three countries in North America, Mexico, US, and Canada, which was called NAFTA, was renegotiated during the previous tenure of Donald Trump, and it is now called CUSMA in Canada. It now appears that there might be perhaps renegotiations on that as well, because Donald Trump doesn't seem happy in the manner in which CUSMA has been made effective in North America. In fact, he believes that there has been flouting and non-compliance of CUSMA, and therefore the tariffs are also a way of pressuring the countries to come back to the negotiating table.
Maha, as always, thank you so much for joining us with the key takeaways and the lowdown. Meanwhile, Australia has declined China's proposal to form an alliance against the United States tariffs imposed by Donald Trump's administration. This decision comes as Washington escalates its trade war with Beijing, imposing a 10% import tax on Australian goods and significantly higher tariffs on Chinese products, as we've said, 145%. China's ambassador to Australia suggested that joint resistance is the only way to counter US's bullying behavior. However, Australia's Prime Minister has clearly said that his country will prioritize its national interests, speak for ourselves, and not align with China's stance. With that, let's turn our attention now to the United Kingdom, where Britain is actually considering deploying troops to Ukraine for 5 years under plans being discussed by allies. This as per a report by The Telegraph. Military chiefs want the deployment to help train and also reconstitute the Ukrainian army to prevent Putin from mounting another invasion. A scheme for a phased withdrawal was raised in the discussions being led by Britain and France, were given to understand, over a coalition of the willing to uphold any post-conflict peace agreement. And in staying with updates from the United Kingdom, well, London, once a global magnet for the wealthy, is witnessing a mass exodus of millionaires. In fact, over 11,000 millionaires left the British capital between January and December, according to a new report by Henley & Partners. Millionaires are fleeing London as we speak, not by handfuls or dozens, but by the thousands. Most of them settle either in Asia or America, and I'll tell you why this is significant. Though this has been happening for a few years now, what is worrisome is that the frequency and the scale of the exits have risen exponentially. Data collected annually by wealth advisory firms suggests that some of the more prominent reasons behind this exodus from London are ever-increasing taxes, failure to fully recover from the 2008 financial crisis, and of course Brexit, Britain's decision to separate itself from the rest of Europe. News and updates continue in a moment right after this very short break. Do stay tuned.
From energy grids to tech breakthroughs to defense cooperation, Prime Minister Modi's fourth visit to Sri Lanka is set to be the most consequential, one that will elevate and reshape the India-Sri Lanka ties from here on. And watch that unmatched, non-stop ground coverage on NDTV World with me, Gauri Dwivedi, right here from Colombo.
In today's interconnected world, India's voice is more crucial than ever. When India speaks, the world listens. At NDTV World, we are that voice, bringing you intelligent and insightful news from India and beyond. From geopolitics and diplomacy to economic shifts, migrations, tech disruptions, and the stories of our diaspora. We cover the news that shapes our global future. NDTV World, your new home for global news, is here.
From interesting tech startups to industry-leading companies, politics, sports, culture, curry, cricket. Oh, there's so much to talk about. Like me, if you too thrive on interesting conversations, this is a show you cannot miss. Watch this space to know more about all matters and all people that make Britain what it is today. Out of Britain, with me, Radhika Iyer.
In today's interconnected world, India's voice is more crucial than ever. When India speaks, the world listens. At NDTV World, we are that voice, bringing you intelligent and insightful news from India and beyond. From geopolitics and diplomacy to economic shifts, migrations, tech disruptions, and the stories of our diaspora. We cover the news that shapes our global future. NDTV World, your new home for global news, is here.
Well, let's get you an update from Manhattan now, where 6 people are dead after a tourist helicopter carrying a family from Spain split in half mid-air and spiraled out of the sky before crashing into the Hudson River, as you can see on through these visuals. Dozens of first responders rushed to the tragic scene after the Bell 206 aircraft, apparently missing its path, plunged into the river near Pier 40 in Manhattan, near the Hoboken border of New Jersey. This was in the afternoon around 3:15 p.m. The head of the Spanish branch of the tech company Siemens and his family were identified as 5 of the victims who were killed. The 6th victim was the pilot, whose identity has not been announced yet. But the doomed chopper was owned and operated by New York Helicopter, which is a tour company in the Big Apple that touts itself for providing comfort and safety to customers. We have a reaction from New York City's mayor. Listen in.
At approximately 3:17 this afternoon, we began receiving multiple calls for a helicopter that crashed in the water. These calls generated the response of many agencies, as Deputy Mayor Daughtry stated, including FDNY, NYPD, the Port Authority, and our Jersey partners, the police officers in Jersey as well, and the Coast Guard. 3 adults and 3 children were on board a Bell 206 helicopter that had left from the downtown skyport just about 3 p.m. The pilot and his family visited from Spain, with our preliminary information as at this time.
Well, let's switch tracks now. US Secretary of State Marco Rubio has confirmed the United States will hold direct talks with Iran tomorrow, as in Saturday, to discuss Iran's nuclear program. These talks between US Special Envoy Steve Witkoff and a senior Iranian leader are scheduled in Oman for Saturday. And in other news, 10 Palestinians detained from Gaza by Israeli troops were freed and returned to the territory, saying they had suffered constant abuse while in prison. In fact, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has denounced about 1,000 current and retired Israeli Air Force reservists who signed a letter calling for an end to the war in Gaza, referring to them as marginal and extremist while expressing support for the serving pilot's dismissal. In a statement posted on X, Netanyahu's office said the Prime Minister backs the decision of the Defense Minister and the Israeli military chief of staff to dismiss those who signed the letter. But I must also inform you that this document, which has ignited a political uproar in Israel, urged all Israeli citizens to demand an end to the war, warning that the bombardment of Gaza puts Israeli captives held in the enclave at risk. And in other news, the International Court of Justice has begun hearings into Sudan's allegations that the United Arab Emirates violated the Genocide Convention by supporting paramilitary forces accused of atrocities in Darfur. At the opening session of The Hague, by the way, Sudan urged the United Nations top court to impose emergency orders, known as provisional measures, to stop the UAE from backing the Rapid Support Forces, which is a paramilitary group that Sudan says is carrying out systematic killings of an ethnic group. In fact, Sudan's acting justice minister said the genocide against the Masalit is being carried out by the Rapid Support Force, predominantly Arab from Darfur, with the support and complicity of the United Arab Emirates. Listen in to UAE's reaction.
So when the applicant suggested this morning that it had no choice but to file this case, that is just not true. The applicant rushes to this podium in The Hague, but for 2 years, it has left its seat at the negotiation table empty. Mr. President, against this context, the idea that the UAE is somehow the driver of this reprehensible conflict in Sudan could not be further from the truth. This case is the most recent iteration of the applicant's misuse of our international institutions as a stage from which to attack the UAE. At every occasion, including here today, the applicant has leveled allegations that are at best misleading and at worst pure fabrications.
And with that, let's turn our attention to a move that unites two of the biggest names in Italian fashion. Prada struck a $1.37 billion deal to buy smaller rival Versace from Capri Holdings, including its debt. Prada is actually seeking to expand, having defied a slowdown in luxury demand, while Versace has been operating at a loss in the last few quarters. This merger strengthens Italy's hand in a luxury industry led by French conglomerates, the biggest being Louis Vuitton. But 1 hour after announcing that they would buy Versace, Prada CEO warned analysts not to expect a miracle overnight, even as they expressed excitement about this acquisition. Meanwhile, Michelle Obama has dismissed rumors that she and former US President Obama are heading toward divorce. While speaking on the Work in Progress podcast, the former First Lady discussed having the freedom to pursue as well as decline different opportunities since leaving the White House. She said whenever she makes a choice for herself, people are usually quick to assume her marriage is over. And let's turn our attention now to the Cannes Film Festival. It's set to take center stage once again as the global heart of cinema, and filmmaker Neeraj Ghewan's latest film, Homebound, has been selected for the prestigious award at this film festival. This actually marks Mr. Ghewan's second feature after his acclaimed debut, which was Masan back in 2015, which also premiered in the same category. The Cannes slate this year features an impressive mix of global talent and fresh stories. Homebound will actually screen alongside Scarlett Johansson's directorial debut, Eleanor the Great, also The Mysterious Gaze of the Flamingo, and My Father's Shadow, among other screenings. Thank you for investing your time and watching this edition of The World 24/7. As always, we'll keep tracking the latest for you. Have a great weekend.
From energy grids to tech breakthroughs to defense cooperation, Prime Minister Modi's fourth visit to Sri Lanka is set to be the most consequential, one that will elevate and reshape the India-Sri Lanka ties from here on. And watch that unmatched, non-stop ground coverage on NDTV World with me, Gauri Dwivedi, right here from Colombo.
In today's interconnected world, India's voice is more crucial than ever. When India speaks, the world listens. At NDTV World, we are that voice.